So I've been serving as deacon at St. Ignatius Martyr Parish, where Carol came. She's my cheerleader tonight. And have been devoting more time there as pastor ministry director there since July, really. And so that's been really good. So I kind of gone from doing 1 million things at a time to 10,000 things at a time, a little bit. But anyway, but I've always had a great love for our faith and trying to understand better. And even though I'm not the smartest brain in science, I've learned a lot, and I've learned from good science teachers here in the diocese even. My idol is a teacher at Holy Family School in Parish, Fred Whitaker, who has helped me to understand things, especially physics, and stuff like that. That's like, I remember a physics teacher in school, we used to always say this little joke, and God said, let there be light, and let there be Father Doer to explain light. Faith and science. So anyway, but I thought we could begin maybe just in a moment of silence, because I know we're all feeling what's going on in our world today. And so I just feel that heaviness of Russia, Ukraine, where that's all going to result to and with, and so I just wanted to hold that. You know how in something like that you can't just pretend it's not there. I feel a little bit like I did on 9/11. I feel a bit like I did when we went into what was it, in Kuwait and Iraq, when that war broke out. You just feel like there's something going on. So maybe we can just hold that for a moment. Loving God, as we gather tonight, we know you hold all things, and we know you feel the same pain and concern that we do. And so we ask that however you are able to operate in all of this, which we're going to be talking about tonight, to really hover over so many, particularly innocent people, usually children and families affected by all of this, and that we can find a resolution and way out. Peace, so important. So many of our hopes have wished so often for war, no more war. We just can't seem to get past that. But help us. And help us in the message we learned tonight, how what we're learning about the beauty and reality of life and creation and our faith have a message and have so much to offer that could make a difference, so we wouldn't have what's happening today. And so we ask for your Spirit to inspire us to be open to learn and how we can be peacemakers going forward. And we pray all of this through Christ our Lord, and we say, amen. All right. Yeah, so, okay. I love this title, Science and Faith, A Marriage Made in the Universe. I think that's pretty cool. I made it up. And I hope tonight to kind of see how these really work together. And I hope our minds can be kind of blown a little bit, Because I really think today people speak about the loss of a sense maybe of God, or people not affiliated with faith for all the different reasons, right? Some who say, well, to have faith, and I've seen this a lot with some young adults, I have to leave my brain at the door, and you don't, But also I think what science can bring us, and maybe what we've sometimes have lost, is a sense of wonder and awe at the mystery of so much, And I almost feel like when you lose the sense of wonder, then you really begin to lose God. I don't know. I hope tonight, with what we look at and hear and listen, that we come away with a greater sense of wonder. But also, the piece I've been working a lot on has been how this marriage, as I said in the prayer, can teach and give to our world. If we were to find in the marriage of faith and science if you would call it a narrative or a story or a vision that could really unite people rather than the division, right, that we have everywhere. And that's so apparent in our own country and now in what's happening in Europe, but even in what's going on in all the places that we don't hear about because now the focus is here as it should be, but there's still all the conflicts going on in so many other places. And so I hope this is just some kind of academic thing. It can be very, very relevant. So a good question might be, I don't know if you'd like to share, why did you come out on this rainy night? I know Carol came to see me, but any thoughts? What kind of sparked your interest? Maybe in a word or two, just, yeah.
I have teenage sons, and I work in a school. I'm actually going to go on a retreat tomorrow with a bunch of seniors, girls.
Uh-huh.
You know, that's a time when they have a lot of questions about how do faith and science
Good.
come together and relate. And so
Oh, you're going to be prepared.
I have some kind of insight. I don't know.
Oh, you are going to be so tutored and ready, and you got the handouts and notes too, so that's good. That's great, yeah.
They like to say that science disproves faith, and that is simply not true.
It's not true, right.
Supports faith and science go so closely together, those that don't see it simply don't want to see it.
Yeah. Because in our Catholic tradition, truth is one because God is one. You know? And therefore the truth of science at its best and the truth of faith ultimately, as we'll learn tonight, cannot contradict. You know? And if they seem like they're contradicting, then either the science has to work on it, some things a little more, or our faith needs to be thought about a little bit differently, or we have to, be refined. And I know it's interesting, so that's good. I like that, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. Right. Really good point, yeah. It was St. John Paul II said, and in saying everything good about science, but science without conscience, or progress in technology without conscience, values can be, and we've seen it, it can be used in very dangerous ways, right? It can also do a lot of good in the best of research and the things that are, finding cures or even some of the genetic work, but then that can also become very scary when that's used. So yeah, that's an excellent point. Going to add a new slide with that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, any others in terms of that kind of makes sense? It's good to think about that a little bit. And I don't know if the second question is related, along with having a good experience tonight, what you hope to gain and take away. Well, we know what you want to take away, right? She's going to be, my little thing is working. I love my red dots. I do not point these at airplanes. Yes. Or cats, that's right. So I like what you said about being able for those people to raise questions. A lot of people do, and so that's good. Yeah. Anything else you hope to maybe take away?
I'm just
Open, good. Good, yeah. Back here, anybody? Anyone? You're good. Be able to have, yeah, good, you will, yeah, that's great. Yeah, so good. Right. They do. Yep.
And their curiosity.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So utilizing science to support what we would like them to access to as a good
That is. I know sometimes I've had little meals with young adults that parents say, my kid's an atheist now, and I go, that's wonderful. They're like, huh? Because they're asking the questions. And it's not that they don't believe in God, but maybe in the way it's been presented or what they think they have to believe, or how they might think you have to interpret the Bible, and science is showing that, the universe is 13.7 billion years, you know, and how does that jive? Use that word, long time. Jive, jive, talking. Yeah, I'll be good, Therese. So yeah, I think this will be very valuable, you know. And that the best of our Catholic faith, that it has an intellectual rigor to it, you know. I mean, yeah, you don't have to leave your brain at the door, you know. At the same time, you know, we want to create, like I said, that sense of wonder, you know, that we can lose. And if we lose that, then God becomes almost not relevant too. I don't know. So those are good. So it's good to think about some of those things. So I'd like to begin just with a little something to think about in the beginning of how we understand the mystery of existence and life, and at least in our universe, and how it began. And in this little piece, what I can say also is that this particular theory, you could call it, though it's well regarded, was brought from a church, actually from our faith, from a Catholic Belgian priest a Jesuit, who was a Jesuit too, yeah. And so, but I'd just like you to enjoy the wonder of this for the beginning. Also be patient, we've got a lot of technologies going on here, so, and you got good handouts, so some of the things that are on the PowerPoint slides, they're hard to see, they've been reprinted for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And that way you've got all the good notes, so. Okay, let's hope that this works. Okay, try it again. What? All right, here we go. And it likes to do these crazy things with me. Don't want that. Then you got to get past the ads. Stop this. I don't know where this. Okay, we're doing Chrome. Come on, don't do this to me. No, I don't need that. You know? Okay. Let's skip the ads.
I call it.
Okay, patience, thank you. But I got a C- in it, so we're not going to do it.
Kentucky State
I don't
residents,
want you.
if you have a utility meter
Go
like
away.
this on the side of your house, you could get paid to go solar
Go
for
away.
no money out.
There we go. Okay. Quite a wonder, isn't it, when you think about everything that is began in whatever that, you know? I mean, it's from music to chairs. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wonder about something, said there was no energy in matter.
Right.
So what was God?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know, that
Didn't God cause the Big Bang?
well, that's kind of what we're going to look at. What does faith say to the science? The science can only say, and they're pretty certain, and it was a Jesuit priest who promoted this idea that many at the time did not necessarily ascribe to, that there really was a beginning. And by the expansion of the universe and things we learn now, and of course with the James Webb scope that's getting all aligned and what it's going to see, it's going to continue to verify that there was a beginning. You know, now you can get into fun stuff to say what was there. Science can try to figure out what was there before. You know, I mean, that was a hard one for me. Space, not even, I think the Bang, all that stuff had to go into something, but something wasn't there yet. You know, and you're like, huh? That really blows your mind. Yeah. So we'll cover some of that. But there's where you begin to see the intersection. Yeah. But it's the wonder of how everything that is at one point all came from it's beyond minuscule of that, and just what that was. That's what I like about that scene of just seeing all the different things, you know, from all the types of fish and you know what I mean, to everything in our bodies and atoms, and it's just, yeah, it makes you think. And so that's why the important thing to start a little bit we're going to talk about then is, so how does that relationship work? What have been some of the approaches of science and faith? And I know I've given you that outline too. You could look at it in terms of that there's a conflict between the two. And there are some people who see it as, contrary to what you said, that they need to work together, but who see that they're somehow opposed to one another, that you could never reconcile science and faith. Okay? That's important. And that can take on two forms. They always say the isms, you know. Scientism. Now that's different than science. But that's those who would think that science has made everything about faith totally irrelevant and you know, crazy. You know, there's no basis for it. If you can't see it, the senses can't demonstrate it, then, you know, there's no way that we can in any way, it's crazy to even think there is a God. You know, that was the late Richard Dawkins, who had ALS, but who had was very supportive of his faith-filled wife, you know, and he just came to that conclusion. There was just no way to, and I often thought when he passed that he'd have a great conversation with God. But he was a good man, very respectful, but he just didn't think that they could, you know, work together. And then on the religious side, fundamentalism are those who say that, well, anything in science that seems to contradict how we interpret the Bible needs to be rejected. So what you might call the creationists, or things like the Creation Museum, who take Genesis, some of those stories, so literally, we had what they called the monkey trials in the, was it the 20s or 30s, that you can't teach evolution or development. I mean, that's the other extreme, right? And so that's one reality. And we may know people, you know, and we're not judging anybody, be they scientists who are scientism type folks or religious people who are fundamentalists, okay? So it's just kind of neat to see that as one category. The other is called contrast, and that's where they're not in conflict, but it's the reality, well, each has its own sphere. So there's no competition, but there's a kind of segregation, okay? Theology and faith does its thing, and science does its thing, and as long as they don't battle each other, let each be to its own, so to speak, And so it's interesting. Contrast reminds us, though, that it's not science but scientism that conflicts with faith, okay? So the contrast view, they're not saying that faith is bad. They're just saying it's its own realm. Science, you stay in your corner. Faith, you stay in your corner. I kind of call it like separate but equal, kind of like a sort of a segregation type of thing. Does that make sense? And I don't know for many of us that's what we thought. Well, okay, religion's over here. Religion, science tells us how, or religion tells us why. Religion gives us the purpose. Science kind of spells out the descriptive of things. Does that make sense? So it's interesting to think about that. Okay. Convergence, I'll let you like learning all these new words, the 3 C's, right? Yeah. Basically says, well, actually, the two could work together. There can be a conversation. Each has something to bring to the other, which some have already suggested in our opening questions. And therefore, science and faith don't have to be segregated or separate, but equal. They can work together. Science and what we're learning does matter to faith. It can help us expand our understanding of God, or even the language that we use. In fact, I would go so far as to say that science at its best is our other sacred text, that we're continuing to learn more. And new discoveries can only but make God greater, even if they might challenge the way we thought everything was, right? And that's why I put in here what this Webb telescope that is seen back in the time, because remember, everything as we look deeper into space, we're seeing the light that's taken so long to get to us, so we're actually looking back to the beginnings. That kind of blows your mind too, doesn't it? And so we're going to see a few million years after that initial bang, spark, cosmic egg birth, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be very interesting. Oh, we're going to be seeing some of those things in about 4 or 5 months, actually. The mirrors are all being aligned. Don't tell me, there again, talk about the brains to figure this thing out, that they got this thing in a spaceship and then it had to be unraveled once it's orbiting around the sun right now, 1 million miles from us, and they keep in touch with it. I'm thinking, Lord, when I was little, I did want to invent a time machine in my garage, but I didn't know how to start. So it's going to be very interesting, because the science is going to expand how we look at God, how we look at creation. Are we the only ones really here? Who knows? I mean, they're looking at all these exoplanets that might be somewhat Earth-like. Could they hold life in some way? I mean, there's just all kinds of things that those teenagers will be asking about, So it's really true. But faith, to what we were saying earlier, can bring something to science too. Faith can help bring kind of a wholeness or connect some of the dots that we're learning about. Faith helps to frame it in some way, because science can never totally understand those 3 things that we call, ultimate truth, beauty, love. How do you scientifically show that? Even the fact that I sometimes think about the fact that this is where faith comes into play when we bring God into it, to think that how does science has to have a kind of faith that the universe is even intelligible, and that we have a brain working with our senses that can even ascertain its intelligibility. And you're like, oh, And so faith is important to science because science will never be able to, just on its own, connect all those dots. But science helps us realize there's a lot more dots than we ever thought, right? You know? So, so convergence is really important. It's really our Catholic perspective. It helps to show how these two can work together and enhance each one. Does that make sense? And the church, really, our Catholic Church at our best, has always, even though sometimes, you know, we had some seemingly conflicts, we have seen how these can work together, okay? I want to share with you one way they work together, which is fascinating. And you're going to listen to something. Some of you may be older than me and were around when radio came. I mean, think about what that must have been like for people, right? And shortly in the years after radio, the church was very interested. And we just had the, let's see, the 91st anniversary of the launch of the shortwave station Vatican Radio. Okay? Kind of cool. And Pius XI, before Pius XII, after Pius X, makes sense, right? Became a really good friend and student of Giuliano Marconi. Where would you be without us Italians? You would not have your cell phones, all right? He invented the wireless, the radio. How did he ever figure that out? Pius XI would come over to he would invite him to the Vatican, and the granddaughter of Marconi, who's still alive, you might hear her voice briefly, speaks about remembering going as a little child, and Pius XI and Marconi would get together, and Pius XI literally sat at his feet and said to him, you know, how do you do this? How did these sounds that you said over the sea waves, how did you figure out how they could be somehow received so that we could hear them? I mean, Pius was just fascinated with this thing. So this is just a little, you'll get to hear the voice of Pius XI and Marconi on the launch of Vatican Radio in 1931. It's in Italian, you know, but it shows this partnership of the two. So hopefully this will work. Okay, so this is a little bit of the anniversary. So we just, it was on February 1931 when Vatican Radio began. And so they had this big celebration just recently for the 91st anniversary. And I mean, you can go to the Vatican and see all this. But this is what I found fascinating. Vatican Radio, we won't hear the whole thing, but Vatican Radio played a clip from that first launch of that. It's very cool.
Vatican Radio, Vatican News Podcast.
Hello, I'm Veronica Scarisbrick. Thanks for joining me. As you know, Vatican Radio was set up by Guglielmo Marconi at the request of Pius XI. But if you wish to have a sound picture of that very day in 1931, which includes the voice of Marconi, his daughter Elettra, and of course Pope Pius XI, stay tuned.
So here's the actual thing.
Vatican state from a great radio station built by Marconi, the Pope, for the first time in 1900 years, Catholicism has sent his voice throughout the world. With this broadcast, His Holiness celebrates the 9th anniversary of his coronation as Pope Pius XI.
That's his voice.
That was the voice of Pius XI at the inauguration of Vatican City's radio station on February the 12th, 1931.
Primi in loco ipso mira sane ope Marconiana uti frui possumus
Ho l'altissimo onore di annunziare che fra pochi istanti il Sommo Pontefice Pio XI inaugurerà la stazione radio.
The words of Pius XI followed those of the father of radio, Guglielmo Marconi.
Le onde elettriche trasporteranno in tutto il mondo, attraverso gli spazi, la sua parola di pace.
While Pius XI spoke in Latin, the universal language of the church.
So you could listen to the whole thing, but the point is fascinating, isn't it? Pius XI was given, that was the first time a pope's voice, and he was given a blessing, you know, to the whole world, and through radio, you know, and then Marconi was there with him. He spoke a little bit too. I just think it's kind of cool. But it shows that convergence, an example of faith and science working together, and the Catholic Church and the partnership, seeing the value of science, how that would allow the message of the gospel, the teaching of the church could now reach, you know, and that was long before TV and all the rest of the stuff, and now maybe we think we have too much, you know. But radio, that was huge. And I still can't figure out how Marconi came up with that, right? And I have an Italian brain. So another great example, you might not know, since 1871 or something, the Vatican has had an observatory to do space work, explorations in astronomy. Some years back, they added another one in Arizona, you know, that they monitor. So it's neat to know that we as Catholics own 2 big telescopes. You know, we have observatories, and we have the Pontifical Council for Science, and all this great work in astronomy that the church has done. And so I just wanted to show you the site here. It's kind of neat. Whoops, went too far, sorry. Here we go. It's coming. This is the website, and I love how it says, you know, faith inspiring science. Isn't that neat? The Vatican Observatory is an institution established by the Holy See for astronomical research and public outreach to advance the scientific understanding of our universe. That's our church, you know? And so it's just kind of neat to see, and they have all these different things about it. You can go to the Pope's astronomer, who keeps them informed. It's really cool. They have different sorts of gatherings. They had one here in the United States, and I wish I could have gone to it, but there's St. Paul VI, who was watching something from the observatory or whatever. You know, it's just kind of neat to see educational things that they do. Oh, that was the summer school. They had one here I wanted to go to, and I signed up, but they were all full, you know. And they do these things around the world to advance that partnership of science and faith. And I don't know, and that's good to tell your students, you know, that the Catholic Church has really been an important player in all of this. Isn't that neat? Yes.
Okay, so I'm struggling here a little bit because if you go back to the early 1900s, I was already Jesuit priest, Father Pierre de Jardin.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I mean, he was trying to bring this about too.
Right.
Actually, wouldn't publish his work.
I know.
So we have a little bit.
We're going to touch on that. Yeah. Well, think about the irony of this. We sent Galileo to his room, you know what I mean? And now we have an observatory. Okay? The inventor of the telescope, you know? And so even though convergence is our way, we've also had some conflicts over time. And there's reasons for that. Yeah. Well, or we weren't quite. Yeah, exactly. We weren't quite ready for it, or we didn't know what to do with it, you know? That's why I always say I love being Catholic, because we are so wholly inconsistent over time. You know, we lock away Galileo, and then we build an observatory, you know? And I just think it's funny, you know? But we finally let him out of his room in the 1990s, believe it or not. We literally did. St. Pope John Paul II.
It just goes to show you we admit our mistakes.
Over time, it takes us a while. Yeah. So, but yeah, that doesn't mean it's always been easy. And part of it is, I learned this from a great science teacher, is that it's important to know that our faith and the church, even going back to our Jewish tradition, always follows the science. How we understand the world, or what we call cosmology. And sometimes we're not always sure until science finally, through a lot more work and evidence, shows that what it is presenting really is true. Then the church kind of catches up. It's just interesting. So, but yeah, really from the beginning, it's really important to see that science and faith have been in dialogue. We're familiar with the creation story, but we need to understand that story that was given was understood in how the world was looked at with the naked eye. Okay? The Jewish writers of this that framed one of the two creation stories, as I put here, there were no telescopes available in 1200 BC. You know what I mean? And so when you read the creation story, they had a whole way of understanding it in the 7 days, which was the liturgical year, kind of the week of the Jewish year, that would make sense with the naked eye, And I've done some things with students and even seniors that have done studies on this with me, where they have written creation stories based on how we understand the universe today. And it's really cool. And you can still teach the essential truths of God as the creator, but we understand it in ways that our ancestors in faith could not have, right? But they were still inspired to see God in creation. But God did not give them some super knowledge that would come centuries later. You know what I mean? Because that would have blown the people away. They would not know what to make of it, right? It's kind of fascinating when you look at that, And so then comes us, we're made in God's image and likeness. That's really important. We originated from the same God, made from the same materials from which the world has been made, Now, what our ancestors didn't know at the time, they thought it was just this. It was the earth. We came out of the dust of the earth, right? They had no concept that actually the earth was this suspended ball in a solar system, in a galaxy among many galaxies, and they got the dust right, but we were actually, as we'll learn a little later, made out of stardust. But they could not have known that, right? They thought the earth was this flat thing. This was it. It had pillars that held it together, and there was a firmament, and the sun and the moon kind of, went back and forth around us. It made sense to the naked eye. Does that make sense? So we're not judging, saying, oh, they were ignorant. They weren't, But as science developed, then our understanding of God and creation and everything else would expand too. But sometimes that was a little scary. But early Judaism, the faith of Jesus, was always seeing God and God's presence in nature. When you read the Old Testament, they speak about God in the fires and in the lightning, and there was all this sense of God in creation. Because nature is the first sacred book. It really is. Long before anything is written, creation, our very existence, is that first sacred book. And that's why our Catholic tradition has always held what we have called natural law. That we follow things and what nature can teach us. The challenge, and where it might be conflict sometimes, is that there have been added chapters that we weren't always sure, what do we do with all this? That the natural law that maybe the early fathers of the church, like St. Augustine and others, new in the 400s, 500 AD, and then the natural law of great scholars like Thomas Aquinas and scientists like St. Albert and others, that was, they expanded things, and they were held in question. Even Thomas Aquinas, because what he was beginning to do didn't fit what we knew years before that. But then comes even more things later that challenge all of that, and that's what we're going to look at next. What began as a real conflict, even though we've always been a people of convergence, right? But it's not always been easy, And so, and you've got this slide. As time went on, and as our faith moved beyond its early Jewish roots, and science eventually would become its own field of study over time in the universities in the Middle Ages, people began to look at things from that purely scientific point of view, so to speak. Science kind of was a latecomer as a field. Theology and philosophy were first. Then would come the natural sciences and physical sciences, and then the social sciences. These things, that would have their birth. And so science began to take a very central place in trying to understand the natural world. Now, this was okay when science vindicated and collaborated what we believed and what we taught, and so it was tolerated. But then when it looked like science was speaking about things that was in opposition, there was conflict, or at least it appeared to be conflict. Are we doing okay so far? This is like history, too, all at once. Yeah. Carol's going, gosh, he never preaches like this, right? No. So it's really important. So the major conflict at first, okay, we need to understand that for thousands of years, science and faith shared a worldview, a cosmology going back to Aristotle and Ptolemy, and which the scriptures themselves affirmed because they were naked eye understandings. And this will be on the test, Carol, just so you know. What was called a geocentric universe, which meant everything went around us, okay? The earth was the center. Or as Miss Piggy would say, it's all about me. I'm the center, Kirby. Okay, never mind. Anyway, that was how everything was understood. And so the faith and the prayers and everything were all about we being that center. The earth was it, and everything else went around us. Just like kids think for a while, right? It's all about me, Very interesting. The challenge happened when people, first of all, like Copernicus, in his studies, and later Galileo by the telescope, would verify this radical change from geocentrism to heliocentrism. That suddenly now the realization was, wait a minute, it's the other way around. The earth and the planets revolve around the sun. The sun is the center. Oh, that was a huge challenge. Everything was built geocentric, and now it's heliocentric. And that's where you were right, the conflict happened. Galileo was sent to his room. Even the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith said that anybody who would dare say that things move, the earth and those things move around the sun, they are in doo-doo. The official church said this is not right. All this stuff can no longer creep into our faith, and therefore all the books by Copernicus and the work had to be either, suspended until they were corrected, okay? So at that time, the faith was saying the science needs to be corrected, okay? Galileo, who was a deep man of faith. His sister was a religious sister. She was a nun, okay? She tried to advocate for him, and she would, and she would visit him in his imprisonment. He was literally grounded in his room for the rest of his life. But St. John Paul II let him out in 1996 or something. They finally lifted his grounding. I love it. Don't you love being Catholic? It's so true. So this was really hard at first, But soon more sciences, Newton and others, began to see a lot of things in the inner world in terms of how things went around different things, and began to see that, this idea of this motion and movement, eventually science was beginning to verify that this was not just some crazy idea of Copernicus or Galileo's telescope needed adjustment or whatever. The science and then math and all these things were coming to be really have to be reckoned with. And so even though there was conflict at times, convergence would win out. And ultimately then, the Catholic Church, even though it was not in the science business, so to speak, but began to be in alignment with heliocentrism, also with the concept of evolution, or this gradual development of everything as a way of understanding creation. That took a lot too. That God didn't do it just like that, but God took billions of years. Just like an artist's painting isn't just like a splash of paint. It's an evolving and developing, but it's still very creative, right? And so the whole idea that God created over deep time, that God was not in any hurry. It changed the whole notion of God as creator and creation as not so static, but as developing and evolving. But we know that in our lives, right? Even though we know that evolution over millions and millions of years happens now in 9 months in a mother's womb. There's a development, right? Our faith develops. Our spirituality develops. And so that was a huge shift that was going on. Still with me? Carol, are we okay? So you can see from conflict, contrast, to convergence. And when we do that, even though it took a little time, we see that science does its great work, empirical work, and faith, though, brings its own way of knowing. That both are equal and beautiful ways of knowing that help one another and help us in our lives and in our lives as a community and as a world as we seek truth and understanding, And so I put here, which I think is so true, that, I think of art and music, beauty and love. How do you put that under a microscope? How is it that even in all the things that science helps understand in terms of photosynthesis that I had to learn in 10th grade biology with Sister Ruth, how is it that we are able to see a flower as beautiful? And think of all that's going on with our eyes and our brain, not only to see it, but to recognize beauty. Science alone cannot explain that. You know what I mean? And so faith is a legitimate way of human knowing. How do you put falling in love under a microscope? Even though we're learning there's certain things that happen physically with neurons and chemicals, but it's still more than what can just be, right? You see, it's really, really, really fascinating. And so the church, gradually, as we work through this, we begin to see that convergence, really fosters this conversation between scientists and theologians, and faith and science both can learn and be transformed and inspire and deepen one another. I love that. Science can create on large and small scales horizons which are so immense that they almost transcend imagination, which is so true. Science what the heck did I do here? I made some boo-boos. Science, I don't know what I did. Catalyzes awe and wonder. Okay, never mind. Hopefully it's right on the handout. Yeah, anyway. I think it's really true. And it helps us both, faith and science, to have a greater, and I call it a powerful humility. We talk about that as one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, awe and wonder in God's presence, right? Or reverence and awe. Science and faith both need that humility when we look at the wonder of it all, right? It's a song Elvis Presley sang. I remember that. It's the wonder of you. There we go. There's a song for you. The wonder of life. So that's really important. Okay. So modern cosmology then has been taking this to a whole other level, to understand how all this works together. And like I said, the birth of this really is owed to that Jesuit priest who really presented this incredible theory, that there was a beginning. There was a singularity where time, energy, matter, space, forces, all these things began. The singularity of E equals mc squared, and all the particles of matter, the forces of nature, everything, had this beginning, And so that always made sense for us. Faith would say, well, that's not a problem. In the beginning, God, right? God said, and the Beatles sang, let it be, that is the sense of God. God is that which lets be, and God did it in a way that in that initial moment would be the potential for everything of our lives, of pews, of computers, and it just blows my mind when I think about that, that in the beginning, there was this singularity. Everything that could ever be, was somehow contained in this, and I don't think scientists can fully explain, and they can't explain where did this even come from, what was before the bang, Some theorize maybe was it a black hole, and could there be more than one universe? The theory of multiverses, that really stretches you, And there's no way we can ever know that for sure. But we'll just deal with one universe at a time. Thank you. That there was this power that was, so tiny, and in these I can't even say the word of seconds or whatever, of compacted energy that just, Faith would say that was love. That God's love, God who is love, okay, the energy of love, what we call Trinity, could not contain God's self, that love shared between those three relations, which I'll talk about in a moment, which science helps to verify, could not help but burst out, And so all you need is love, So faith would give to science to say, well, it wasn't just a purposeless fluke or chance, which even that is incredible. It was an act of love, of giving birth, which is kind of neat. And that's why I like, rather than Big Bang, I call it the cosmic birthing. And I think about the minuscule fertilized egg, zygote, some of you have been able to carry. Thank you all who are women that I thank God every day that I'm alive and that I'm not a woman, because I could not have survived childbirth. Okay, but anyway. But I like to think of it as a birthing. And that's a beautiful thing that faith can do. And so what's really understood today is that in a single moment, we think about 13.7 billion years ago, and our new scope is going to be seen a few million years after this, that everything we could ever know and ever be, and everything and all this stuff, thank you, Einstein was also a great Jewish person of faith, all of this began in this burst of energy that had every potential for everything. And don't ask me how in the heck, you know, that would be the possibility of atoms and everything else. It just blows your mind when you study. I wish I had a better brain. You know, I'm giving you very elementary physics. Maybe Therese Brennan could give you more. I don't know, but it's really a lot. And so it's really fascinating, and we're not going into all of this, but just thinking about how in those first few seconds then of the bang, then this energy became all these particles and forces, which would ultimately define the universe, you know, but they weren't even yet atoms. Because we know now atoms is the atomic structure of everything, including these pews and everything and stones. And so we share everything by our atomic structure. And that has some implication for how we relate to living and even non-living things in the world. That gets quite fascinating too. But there's all these things that are now what they call subatomic, eventually would make up atoms, and these will not be on the test. I thought quarks was who I was sometime. I'm a quark, you know. So, but now they've discovered even smaller than quarks are these leptons, you know. And so deep inside of atoms are all these tiny particles which make them up. I mean, so you got the vastness of the universe that's made up of that which is the vastness of these minuscule small things going inside atoms. Holy moly! You know, the miracle of the vastness and the miracle of what is small. And then science, as science delves deeper, what in the heck holds it all together? My wife will say, God. You know, it's really neat. And so ultimately, the development of the universe from these 12 particles of matter and the 4 forces, who in the heck still understands gravity? If it wasn't for gravity, we'd be going, right? You know, there's something that holds us down, but if there wasn't for the other forces, everything would just compress. And that's when you have the awe and wonder of our even being able to exist, you know, as people, as our planet, you know, what keeps our Earth right where it is, you know, around the sun. And the sun, that's the right size of a star. And if it wasn't for the moon, we'd be all out of whack. And the other planets help keep us in alignment. You know, how does all this work? You know, going around the sun. And now we've discovered the sun in our solar system is going around in our galaxy. You know, Abraham just saw a little bit of the Milky Way galaxy. He could not have imagined that. And now we know there are billions and billions of galaxies. Oh my gosh. It's like, God, did you have nothing else to do? Right? It's really cool. So, anyway, you don't need all of this if you want to study it. You can see what they tried to understand in those early moments of the bang that formed the things that would make atoms, that would eventually be able to cool down to form what would be the galaxies and stars, and all of those kinds of things are just fascinating to study. And we're going to see it in action in a little bit, but that's really kind of neat. And so anyway, scientists then, like I've already got ahead of myself, but they see the universe in really 2 worlds. There's all of that that's out there, the outer, and then there's the inner, what they call the quantum world, you know, which is inside all of that which makes the outer possible. And that just blows my mind, you know, and I wish I had a better mind to understand it, you know. The quantum world is fascinating too, because everything that we see on the outer is made up of atoms, and then within them is this whole inner world of these particles and how they all relate to each other. All I know is we would not be here and be doing what we're doing, you know, or you hearing me and having voice and language, not to mention technologies from Marconi to the computer, you know. I mean, it's all just really incredible. So it's fascinating. And then what they've studied, they have these things that isolate. Have you heard of these particle blasters or whatever? You might have, I know the teenagers have, that they isolate the smallest, what you could get smallest possible in terms of breaking down matter, and then where do they go? And the particles, they become like a wave of energy, and when you keep breaking down into the quantum world, it just blows your mind. You know, it really does. I love after everything, and Einstein we owe a lot to, when he talked about relativity and everything that goes along with it. In the end, you know, it's still a dang mystery. Remember the good religious sisters always said, it's a mystery, you know, because this quantum reality that's studied in physics, and I just learned more recently about quantum foam and quantum loops and gravity waves. It's just fascinating. But what these waves are saying is that in our universe, in some way, and this will have implication for the last part of this presentation, is everything is joined and connected. You know, I think that's the part that really, really blows your mind. Okay. Now, the fact is, though, that you and I and where we came from is very interesting, because we were not made out of the original stuff in the beginning of the universe. It was only eventually that other elements would be made, you know, and those were made because initially there were just these lighter elements. We needed these heavier things, hydrogen, helium, carbon, iron, all of that's really important. Carbon is what makes it possible for us to be, okay? Here's the beautiful thing about it. All of that came when the earliest stars died. We call those supernovas, explosions. Our sun is a second generation star. It came about from other stars that died. It's fascinating. And then in some way that only, well, the mystery of it, as it was spewed out, some of the other pieces got caught by this sun that would become our sun and got caught in its gravity. These would become us, the planets. I mean, it's just incredible how all of that happened and how all of that in some way had to be just right for us. You know, I think of Psalm 108, you know, when I look at the heavens, who are we that you think of us? The majesty of it all, which the Psalms, they were filled with wonder. They could not have even fathomed this kind of thing. And what that means is, and here's the thing that wraps it all up, you know, every atom in our body came from a star which lived billions of years ago. It exploded and died. You know, it gave birth to what would become other stars, which would be our sun. And so in a very real way, like the song that was sung during the Woodstock era, we are stardust, we are golden. Remember that one? And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. I wanted to be a hippie, and I wanted to go to Woodstock, but I was a few years too young. But they were right in that great song. You know, we are made from the same stuff which lights the universe. What faith tells us, and this is really cool, and Teilhard de Chardin knew this, because he understood Jesus, and even St. Paul did, and that could be another talk, in a cosmic way. The cosmic Christ. That's really cool. But think about this, what we call in our Catholic faith the Paschal mystery, the mystery of Jesus' dying and rising. But that just affirms what was already built in to the very universe itself, what I call a cosmic Paschal mystery. That we are here because of those first stars that died, that gave down and laid down their very lives so that these other things and elements and eventually our own sun and planets would come to be over these billions of years of development and deep time, and everything having to get into its right place. And you look at that and say, oh my gosh, how? Right, Carol? I mean, the fact that we are here, from all of this could come these, for the most part, brains or eyes. I mean, it's just truly remarkable. But it is something that faith says, it affirms our understanding of our deep mystery of faith, dying and rising. It affirms that for us, as we say in the funeral ritual, death is not ended but changed, right? That's not just a nice thing of faith. Science validates that, you know, that somehow we go on, you know, in resurrection. You know, it's just pondering it just sort of gets you a little crazy, right? It really does. Are you overwhelmed yet? Are you filled with wonder? I know this is a lot. It really is. So anyway, to wrap up the universe, the other real mystery of it all is that all that we even see, or our new telescope, not only the Hubble has seen, and now the James Scott will see, is still just a small part of everything. You know, the visible matter is only about 5%. You know, dark matter, dark energy, it blows your mind. There's so much that even science has to say, we do not know. What is holding it all together? You know, I love this. You know, okay, we might know maybe 5%, but 95% is mystery. But all of it is all. Even what we can see, the wonder of galaxies and the possibility of planets around, can't even count the numbers of stars because of the numbers of galaxies. Is E.T. out there? I don't know. E.T. phone home. Yeah, I don't know, you know. That's pretty good, right? Yeah. All right, Carol's going, it's getting late. You got to stop. So it really is a fascinating kind of thing. What'd you think of that? There was a lesson in physics and cosmology. So, to wrap it, how am I doing? I'm doing good. Okay, I'm doing good. All right. I'd like to wrap it up by putting it all together. Maybe in a little way we can visualize and hear and see. Would you like to do that? Are we doing okay? I know I didn't give you a bathroom break, but we'll just march on, then you can go to the bathroom after. Yeah. Just think, even that was in the beginning of the bang, having to be able to go to the bathroom. Who figured all that out? We won't go there. Okay. And these are beautiful YouTubes, you know, for students. You've got them there so you can go for young people to see, because they like being engaged. You can't just, I know I'm talking too much, that's why I didn't want to do that. I want you to experience some of this. Okay, let's see if our YouTube works now. Wait a minute, where'd it go? Whoops. Okay, come on. All right, I'm having problems. Why am I? Come on. Well, no, stop that. I'm going to be. Come on, you've worked before. I'm not happy. Okay, let's start with this one. Then we'll go back to the other one. It's technology. Now it's going to play around with this thing. Stop it. I love technology. Oh, I want you to see one of these. Okay, one last time. Don't give up. Oh. Well, you know what? You have the links to go to at home. Why is it doing this? It wants to browse. Oh, I am so sorry. I had it working before. No, I don't want that. I've already got Chrome. You ever have these problems at home? These are beautiful clips. Well, yeah. Are you good at this kind of stuff? Or know why I'm... Well, I've been doing the Chrome, which is my, I don't know. Okay, well.
You have another one.
Oh, shoot, now I just lost my... All right.
Depends on how much time you lose.
Yeah, all right, we'll let that be. We'll let that be for now. Okay, hang on. Now we lost the... You know, I wanted to impress Carol. All right. Hang on. Okay, here we go again. It's never too easy, is it? That's coming right back there. No, I'm not. We're going to skip it. But you can go to it. It wants to load it, doesn't it? Now is it going to work? It wants to do that. All right. I'll give it one. I just don't like to give up, but it's the old thing, turn the toaster over. All right, we're going to be done with that. Never mind. All right. Okay. Well, I am so sorry. But I think you got the idea, right? In terms of that. But do go to those YouTubes. And, yep. And the thing that you'll see is in all of those things is that, and Pope Francis speaks about this too so well. You know, he says science understands reality where every element connects and interacts with everything else. That's the thing I wanted you to see on that one YouTube, that the inner world of these, when they finally break down everything, they find everything is never isolated from something else. The ultimate of everything is relationship, relationality. And I remember once I gave a homily on the Trinity in quantum physics, in quantum entanglement. Remember I tried it? I don't know if I tried it at Ignatius. But the idea is that everything exists in relationship. And science is doing that. And I thought, aha, this is what we believe about our God, right? God is relational. God is this dynamic relationality that, again, bursts forth. And so we also are in relationship with everything. The final piece that I gave you is, what does this all say about our Catholic social teaching, how we live our faith in the world, given even like what's going on today? I think it's really important. And I just will share a couple things, and you can read them later, but you know, we believe in the life and dignity of the human person is at the center point of everything. And so what science and quantum physics are saying is that we all have come from that same point, right? We all were born from that same birthing process. We all have been connected to each other. And I think that's something that's so important, that everyone has value because of that. What if we believe that in our world, right? You know, science has shown that just as the earth is no longer the center, there is no place, they think, in the universe where anything is the center. Everything is the center. I thought, wow. You know, the universe, as a great person once said, is we are the universe become conscious. You know, that's where I felt bad. We couldn't see the one little clip that talks about we are in the universe and the universe is in us. You know, it's really neat. So make sure that's going to be your homework. You got to go see that, you know. So no matter what color, gender, culture, language, we all have this equal dignity. We all have a shared stardust. You know, that is so important. That's something science speaks to, affirming, you know, in our faith. We are called to family and community. We are called as social beings in relationship. Well, once again, science is showing that everything, down to subatomic particles, exist in relationship. And I already mentioned about the Trinity there. It's really interesting that when you get down to the most minute physical level, nothing can be explained by itself. Everything has to be understood in relationship to other particles. It's fascinating. Even at great distances, there's a linking of particles to each other, even if separated by billions of light years of space. That blows my mind. You know? But I have used that to speak to those who've lost loved ones, and what we say is that nothing can separate us. We speak about that, Paul says, from the love of Christ, but from our loved ones. You know, we are still quantumly entangled with our loved ones, you know, in some way of mystery, you know, that our faith has always intuited, and now science is saying that we're connected. Isn't that hopeful? You never would think of it that way, you know? Sounds like the Trinity, yes. That God is ultimately relational, and therefore our loved ones who are in that relationship with God, we are still connected to them, and they to us, and maybe closer to us than we could ever imagine. Science affirms that. It's really kind of neat. Solidarity and the fact that this is so important today, that we are all one family no matter where. We are connected to each other, you know. You might have heard this thing once before. It's a thing in quantum physics called non-locality, that the slightest movement of a butterfly's wing could change a system or energy pattern somewhere way across the universe. They've proven that. I mean, I can't explain it. You know, it's like that, whatever it all is, it's like when you have a sheet and you can be shaking it here, and eventually the person that's holding the other part will feel it. They're saying everything in some way is connected. You know, I love this physicist who said, pick a flower on Earth and you move the farthest star. That's a scientist. Wow. You know, we've all emerged from the same force. We're part of a single community of life, and in all the diversity that has developed, we are joined together at fundamental levels. And we've learned that during this COVID pandemic, right? What began, whatever, how it all began there in Wuhan, who could have thought? You know, a germ, right? A virus. It shows. And then I think, have we not learned? You know? And yet that very thing, and then now we're having wars again, and I'm thinking, when will we ever learn? Science and faith teach us a different lesson. I don't know. It's very frustrating. But that's the reality maybe of sin and evil and all those things that get in the way, and I bet it must get God as frustrated as we get. God says, can't you see? Look at how everything has been, you know, has been made. And that's what Pope Francis says so beautifully. He says we've got to, and this is so true today, you know, we have to recognize that we are one with diversity. We don't have to be separated, take sides, form parties. He says when we do that, we just mess everything up, you know. We have to recognize that we can be one with our differences. Thank God we're not all the same, right? You know, but God, Trinity, is ultimately a unity in difference. And yet, we have differences and we make them divide us, right? That's so true. We know that all too well. We have a special concern for those who are most vulnerable and poor. And I think we've learned that too. We're all connected. You know, who are suffering often the most in the pandemic and other things, you know, are those who are least, who have the least access to things, you know. We have to, again, understand that we are connected. You know, we've had to deal with vaccine inequity. We look at the effects of climate change on those who live in coastlands, and most recently, the barrage of cyclones in Madagascar, that island, things that we've never seen. Who's being affected? You see, that's what we're all need to really work on. There's some hard lessons. There really are. And creation. You know, science shows us that we are related, not just to one another. That would be great if we could learn that, you know, in caring for creation. But we are all connected to our earth, to the sun, bees, plants. Hey, as a vegetarian, where would I be without the plants? But there would be no plants without the bees. And there wouldn't be any plants without photosynthesis. And there'd be no photosynthesis without our star, the sun, you know? And so when I look at that, I'm filled with wonder and gratitude, right? And how does all that happen? All these pieces which we have taken for granted. And yet in some of our misuse and abuse of our fragile atmosphere, we didn't have an atmosphere just right the way it is. It lets just what we need in from the sun, but not too much, right? I mean, it's all amazing. And that's why we have wonder and awe, but we also, at this time, it's more critical than ever to see the marriage of science or modern cosmology with our Catholic faith and our social teaching is such a beautiful richness that if it could be incorporated and practiced, if people could honor those values, it would be a whole different scene today. The disastrous consequences for our environment, the wars we're seeing as of today in our human family, you know, all of this would be so different if we all came to really realize that we are joined in life to others, the earth, all created reality, and the universe. And this is what our faith teaches. This is what St. Francis of Assisi knew before Galileo's telescope. He knew that before quantum entanglement, when he sang Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Cousin Bee, you know. Our faith affirms, and science is giving us even more of the beautiful evidence. And when we can put that together, it's so wonderful, isn't it? And I want you to see those YouTubes. I'm so sorry. You'll look at them at home. Thank you. Therese will say, help me get over it. So anyway, so how was this? Does this give you a little food for thought or lots of thought? Yeah. If anything, like I said, the last words I hope, and what we want to share with others, is we need to really have a sense of wonder, you know, and then also realize what this teaches us. You know, we are joined together. We are all part of one another, and we're part of everything that is, and even that which is beyond. And I just today, like I said, I just feel with a sadness today because I was seeing all this positive stuff and then seeing what happens as humans, you know, because we can also make such a mess. And that's why we need Jesus, you know. We need the Alpha and the Omega. We need the cosmic Christ. We need salvation because we can't realize all this maybe on our own. And that's where faith says science can give us the knowledge, but it's not always going to move us to accept it. That's where we need grace, right? That's Christ that we're joined to. And so that's where our faith brings something. Amen, Teresa. Anything more you want to say? Yeah, thank you for coming out. I hope this was... See? I got done on time, even early. It's still not going to work. I got to give up. Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. Blessings on your retreat. Yeah. on it, yeah. I mean, this could really be like a series, you know, there's so much to talk about. Okay. Didn't have time for the story tonight. Well, I know Fern was there, you couldn't figure that out. Who knows what does these things sometimes, you know? I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry. Oh, I said if Fern was there, you might have been able to figure it out. They work with Father.
I know, but I didn't want you to take time, you know?
No, I know that you were wise.
Anyway, and they have it, they'll watch it.
Yeah, that's true. I just love it. I want everything to go so perfect.
Oh, I know, that's me too. Like the flood I just caused.
Yeah.
Major, well, you'll see it when you go out. Major flood out there.
Well, I got all your equipment now all turned over.
Okay. Oh, shoot, I got to turn off the,
Oh, yeah.
so now everyone in the church knows.